You're listening to the Women in Motorsports special edition episodes by the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. This episode features Sara Elrod. So when we originally interviewed Sara, I wasn't too familiar with her, but this was someone that you've been aware of for quite some time, and I know you're good friends with her boss and also the person that she races for, correct?
Yeah, I remember first seeing Sarah when she was just a young girl racing micros around Indiana, and I just kind of followed her career from a distance and just kind of watched her progress. And uh, great driver. She actually did some test laps in my nephew's midget, as she was trying to work towards something else, and she needed to get some laps before she went and did some other testing. I know she's driven for Bob East once. Got rained out, but she had a pretty good night that night going, and I think she's going to be back in the car again. Yeah, Sarah, man, what can you say? Hard worker, welder by trade, owns her own business with her husband. She gets into a little bit of that. Drives race cars. Man, she really puts in the effort.
Absolutely, definitely very impressive young woman. And yeah, no, it was great talking to her and kind of learning about everything that she's involved with. And hopefully we'll be able to go see her race sometime this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. They race a lap of US 24, which is up north. I believe it's Peru, Indiana, uh, and places around there. And they run a few bigger shows during the year, but their shops are based out near Lafayette, if not Lafayette, Indiana, up in that area. So yeah, I'm really excited to go see a race this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll go ahead and jump into the interview, and I hope everyone enjoys. Our guest today drives for Doug Wright Racing and Micro Sprints. He has over 70 feature wins. He's also an entrepreneur and a welder. We're joined by Sara Elrod. Sara, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm doing well.
Sarah, a long time no talk. I think we've only spoken really only ever once, um, but I've watched your career for a long time. So it's glad to be able to sit down and talk with you for a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely been a minute. I think maybe one time we spoke. Obviously I hear a lot of things from Doug when he talks to you, but yeah, it's been a while.
I'm sure it's all great things, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it's all great.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So Sarah, man, first time I saw you, you're a little girl at a racetrack. I don't know what age you started really racing, but I don't even know where I was, and I saw you in the pits, and I was like, man, who is that? Like, I just, you know, it was just one of those things. Like, man, I'm gonna follow her and kind of see where she goes, and then I just kind of watched, obviously, your results and that, and as you grew through the sport, kind of walk through how you even got interested in racing.
So, my parents didn't really have anything to do with racing. We're not a big racing family by any means, or we weren't when I was little. Um, so basically, my dad loved Indy cars, loved going to Indy to watch. And we have a local dirt track, US 24 Speedway, that's about 45 minutes away from where I grew up. And my parents took me to the track when I was about 4 years old, probably, and they were considering starting a kids class, so a junior sprint class. And of course, I was the right age, and they asked me if I was interested in doing it. And of course, I was, because I was super competitive. I love things like that. And so I started racing at 5 years old, and I've raced every year since. So I just fell in love with it.
What drew you to the sport?
I'd say competition is a big thing. I'm a very competitive person, no matter if it's like walking out to get the mail or racing or anything else. But I like to learn new things. That's part of what I'm enjoying about where my career is at right now, is learning new things often. I really like that. There's a lot of good people in racing. Basically my whole life revolves around racing or some sort of racing at this point. My job, I met my husband through racing, pretty much everything.
The yeah, so you started out in juniors, and then what age did you start running the micro sprints?
So the ages have changed a little bit now since kids are getting into racing so much younger. But when I started, it was 5 to 10 was like your kids class. So junior sprints, 100 cc little cars that look like sprint cars, and then I moved up to a restrictor class, so which would be the micro sprints, 600 cc engine, but it's restricted down a little bit slower. I ran that for 2 years, and then I moved up to the open class at age 12, which is the full blown, fast as they get for these type of cars. And I've raced that ever since. So, it was kind of quick moving through, but, we've been able to win a lot of races, and I had to prove that I was ready to go to the next step once I did.
What was your
Yeah,
first like
I'm
real?
sorry. Go ahead, there.
Oh, no,
My
sorry.
apologies.
No, I was just gonna say, like, what was your first like taste of victory in which you realized, like, maybe I can actually do this?
Um, I won some races when I was in the junior sprints. I don't necessarily remember them per se. Obviously I see pictures, but I was so young that it was, just kind of a blur. I'd say once I started, I remember before 12 years old, but I think they started to mean something around then because I knew I was racing with adults. I knew it was tough. I knew more about the cars. I knew what went into it, the work and everything else. So I'd say somewhere in there when I started winning races is when I knew that it could possibly be a career in the future.
You were hands on from day one, right? I mean, it was just you and your dad essentially going to track. Is that about right?
Yeah, so I've always had to be hands on, otherwise I wasn't going to race. I like it was every Sunday you wash the car, you get it ready. Even things that I didn't know how to do at the time, it was you stand there and you watch your dad do it. Uh, the old hold the flashlight thing that they always joke about, that was me as a kid. But yeah,
That's
I've
me as
always
an
been
adult.
hands on.
That's me as an adult right now, by the way.
Yeah, that happens occasionally now too. But yeah, always been hands on. I enjoy learning it. There's different aspects that I'm not as good at, but for the most part, I know majority of the things that need to happen on the cars that we run now.
Would you say that, I mean, now, you're a female, um, which it's not rare in racing today, and it wasn't that rare then, but it kind of in micros at that time, there wasn't a ton of females racing. There was some. Did you just have to kind of, and I hate saying it this way, like gain like people's respect, people who didn't race with you, like in the juniors or whatever. Kind of, did you feel a little pushback at first until they figured out, oh, I can't move her out of the way. I can't stick a wheel in her because she'll do it right back.
Yeah, I'd say, I didn't really notice it when I was younger, but as I got older, you definitely kind of have that, they try and intimidate you feeling, which you just kind of learn to brush off. There definitely wasn't as many girls running when I started as there is now, which obviously it's nice to see more girls, but, I was told when I was younger, once you put the helmet on, you're all the same. So, there's I try to just look at it that way, and I don't want to use being a female or of a different race or anything like that to my advantage, I guess, if that makes sense.
Sure. I remember, again, I think you were probably around 12, the first time I saw you race. And I was watching the feature and I watched how you race and saw people leaning on you a little bit. And then, but I saw you immediately either adjust, make the move to get back around them, or make a move to get around them if you're initially getting around them, and either like drive them like they did you, or just move on down the road. And I thought, man, now she's got something that's a little different. Like she can really hold her own, and I was always impressed with that. I just always thought you had a little something different, that and even some of the male drivers didn't have.
Yeah, it's I think for anyone, whether you're female or male, I think you've got to show that you can't take anything from anyone. You don't want somebody coming up behind you to pass you, and instantly know that you're going to move out of the way. Like, you basically just have to establish that from the beginning, knowing that you're going to be a tough person to pass. You're going to race them clean, but you're going to be tough and race them just like you'd want them to race you.
Right.
So my understanding is you went to school to become a welder. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I graduated high school. I actually left high school a little bit early because I was doing so much racing. So I basically did my last little bit online, and everything was racing at that point in time. That's all I was gonna do. I had my heart set on it, and so I was traveling around doing different races, doing this and that, and I kind of realized that it was gonna be not necessarily harder than I thought. I knew it was gonna be hard, but things weren't happening as fast as I wanted them to. So I decided to go to school for welding because I knew I could either work in a shop or be around racing in general. So I went to Ivy Tech and I got an industrial technology degree, which uh, basically is kind of like a business degree with welding in it. And I was able to get certified in welding, which I really enjoy, and was helped me be able to get a job with Doug at Doug Wright Racing. And that's kind of led me to being able to be in a job that also has to do with racing as well.
Did you just, because I know from my brother Bill, and you worked with Bill a little bit when you went and tested that midget. I know for Bill that
Yep.
was kind of his route. He went to when he went to high school, he went to technology school as well, and that's where he learned so much of, just from welding to body work to all of that. And I think that's a great thing to do, especially if you're trying to make it in a motorsports profession, one way or another. And I would encourage anybody listening, if you're younger, if you're interested in that, go do it, because those skills, once you have those skills, nobody can take them away from you. People still need things welded, all that type of thing. And I just think that's I think that's such a much needed trade, especially today.
Yeah, for sure. And, just like, with this interview, that's one of the first things that people ask, when I've met different car owners or this and that and the other. They're kind of like, well, what's your background? What do you know about racing? And being able to say, well, I wasn't able to drive at the time, so I found something that I can do in the shop, or I found something I can do. Another person's case would be, on the computer, or whatever you learn. Be able to help the team outside of just driving, I think, is a big thing. And I feel like a lot of kids nowadays don't really have that. They don't learn the hands-on portion of it.
Oh yeah, I agree. That, like, and the joke is, the kid gets out of the car, he goes, plays video games or whatever he does in the trailer, and the parents work on the car. And like I said, the first night watching you guys, that's absolutely not how it was in your family, and obviously, that carried on. You kind of what roads led you to getting with Doug, in terms of, I mean, racing was something you wanted. I mean, this is your life, one way or another. It's your life.
Yeah.
And how did it kind of lead you to Doug?
Okay, so it's kind of a funny story. So I'm going to school. I'm working this part-time job cleaning houses because I have to have money somehow to be able to go to the racetrack. And so I'm going to school to learn to weld. And I was sitting in class one day and I was like, man, I got to find something else to do. I don't want to clean houses. This is not fun. So I literally just Googled race shops near me, and Doug Wright Racing was the first one that popped up. And so I type out this email, give Doug my spiel of how I love racing, but I want to be able to be off on weekends, and I want to learn racing stuff, or I can help the shop doing whatever, but I'm going to school for welding. And I told I sent that email, and I told my dad at the time. I was like, "Hey, I sent this email to this guy. Do you know this guy?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I went to high school with him." And I was like, "Oh, I've never heard of this guy." So Doug sends me an email back, and he says the same thing back. Basically says, "Yeah, I'd come in and we can talk about possibly a job." And he's like, "By the way, I think I went to high school with your dad." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, apparently they know each other." So I met with Doug, and I've worked there 6 years since. So it's been a good relationship on both the work and racing side.
Yeah, I know Doug thinks the world of you. I'm probably not supposed to say that right before reviews come out, but he he thinks the world of you. So remind him of that. Um, but you know, auto racing. At what point did you realize that one day, like you said, you're cleaning houses to go race?
Yeah.
And I think that's admirable. I mean, my mom was a waitress, sent my sister through college at Alabama, or helped send her through college at Alabama. And I mean, I think that's, I mean, I have so much respect for anybody who does anything like that. Um, at what point, I mean, obviously around that time, you're like, hey, I got to start figuring out how I'm going to keep racing. Um,
Yeah.
so, so you get to Doug, and kind of at the point where you get to Doug, were you still racing every weekend, or had you already started slowing down a little bit?
So yeah, I was at that point in time. So I had just started college. So I went to college about 21-ish in there. Um, I At that time I knew that, like I said, the racing wasn't going to be as easy to get into as I was kind of hoping it was going to be. So I needed to do something. So obviously the welding came along, and I was racing every Saturday with my parents locally. We weren't traveling too far at the time, and I knew I needed to find somebody that could help me out, that knew people, that was able to introduce me to different people. And once I met Doug, I quickly found out that he had a big racing background that I wasn't even aware of, and that he knows a lot of people. Obviously, a very smart guy, and he actually, I think it was maybe like a couple weeks into racing, um, he came to the races for the first time because I had been talking about it, and apparently he was a little bit impressed. But of course, I was leading the feature, and my engine blew up, and he actually helped my parents buy an engine to replace that engine, and that was basically the start of him deciding that he was going to buy a micro at that point in time. So yeah, it's a pretty cool story.
Where do you really like view yourself, I guess, in like 5 years? Like if you were to have an ultimate goal, like obviously probably to progress to another form of racing possibly, like where would you like to see yourself ideally?
5 years from now, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I'm getting a little bit older, so it's getting tougher. Like I said, the kids are starting much younger, and you know, money is definitely a big aspect in that. Um,
Sure.
I'd like to say that I'd still be running things occasionally. Obviously, I'd like to be able to do some local stuff, and I have an opportunity to run some pavement midget stuff for Charles Breidinger this year, and also hopefully be able to get back in a dirt midget for Bob and Janice East. They gave me an opportunity at the end of last year, and of course the feature rained out, but before that it went really well. So I'd like to be able to hit and miss a few races, and be able to continue learning, run different things. I truly enjoy that.
And you had some tests like ARCA tests and some things like that as well. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so I've been able to test quite a few different things, kind of be able to talk my way into some stuff that I knew I couldn't afford at the time. But the ARCA test I did with Bill and Will Kimmel, it was pretty intimidating at the time. I'd never been on pavement. I'd never even driven a stick shift car. So they basically kind of just threw me to the wolves. It was a really cool experience. I learned a lot. I think there was around 50 cars, and I was, about the midway point. I think I was like 24th or something out of 50 cars, and they said that was about as fast as the car was going to go at the time. So I was pretty happy with that. I thought it would open
And
a
it's
little
not
bit
like
more
you were
for.
running somewhere. It's not like you were running just a quarter mile. To be fair, where
Yeah,
were you guys
yeah,
at? Where were you at?
yeah. It was at Daytona the first time, so
Oh.
that was a big learning curve for sure.
Yeah, I'd say. Oh man, I'm sorry. I know I interrupted you, but I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure
you're
that
fine.
you said where you were running at.
Yeah, I kind of skipped over that a little bit, but yeah, it was definitely different. I think I'd been to a few NASCAR races. I don't think I'd ever been there before then. And I just remember thinking like, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing. I was talking I'd never had a radio before we had to buy a helmet and a radio when we got down there because I didn't even have it. I just had all my dirt stuff. And I'm talking on the radio like I don't know what I'm doing, and then I got stuck in a draft with some other people, which is a big no-no the first time you're at Daytona in an ARC car, apparently, and I didn't know at the time. So, yeah, definitely a big learning curve.
Yeah, but from that, so you walk in as green as could be, and when you walked out of there, what were you thinking?
I had I think I'd say I was very, very hopeful compared to before. It kind of gave me that confidence to know that I could do it. At least, I didn't go out there and destroy the car the first time I was out there. I got a feeling of how it felt, just being in a different car, a heavy body car. And I think I attracted a little bit of attention around the pit area just because I was different. I was from a completely different background. Normally racing dirt, I still had dirt on my helmet. My first helmet that I pulled out, tear offs and whatnot, and they were like, "Where is this girl from?" So it was different. I met a lot of people when I was down there, and everybody kind of gave me that talk, like, "Oh, you're gonna go somewhere. You're gonna be able to do something," and so that kind of led me to do the NASCAR diversity program. I basically did the audition, I guess is what they call it for that, and that never ended up working out. But yeah, it was kind of a sore deal after that.
Yeah, unfortunately, this sport can be mean to everybody, right? It can it shows you a lot of what it can offer, and then it'll pull it away, and it happens. Like we have so many guests that come in through here, race car drivers that have run the 500 or done this that, and the other, and they tell the same stories. It's just it's such a slight few that really get to the top and are able to make that living at it. But like where you're at today, like if you got a say a full time sprint car ride, where you sack or maybe a wing deal like a MOA deal or something like that, would you be interested in something like that? Like just running full time 50, 60 races a year?
My first instinct is yes, just because that's everything I've ever dreamed about. When I was 5 years old, it was the World of Outlaws was like my big thing. That and Indy, and yeah, I'd like to say yes, I would want to do it. It'd be kind of hard with the situation I'm in now. I have my own business. I work for Doug, family and whatnot. But it would definitely be a very, very hard decision.
Yeah, and that we were talking to somebody, I don't know when, not too long ago, just talking about when you start getting family involved and stuff like that. And then it starts being a whole different thing. And your commitments, you have to be true to whatever commitment you make. You have to really stick to it. And it gets tougher, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Did
that's no doubt.
So what do you guys got planned for this year?
So this year is kind of hit and miss. We should be able to get Doug's micro sprint out some, run some local races. And then obviously I would be helping him with any of the customer cars that we have at the shop. So we have the Silver Crown car, and then another micro kid that we help out. And then I'm supposed to run some pavement midget stuff for Charles Breitinger. We kind of met each other through Bob East last year, and he gave me my first test in a pavement midget at Anderson last year, and I loved that. Of course, Doug loved it because that's kind of his background. So
Yep.
It was a big learning curve for me. Pavement midgets are not really what I thought they were, but they're really neat, and I'm looking forward to being able to possibly run some races or at least get some testing in this year. And then
what was before I forget, I'm sorry. What was different about running the pavement midget versus what you thought it was going to be like running a pavement midget?
I'd say I knew it was going to be grippy, but it was hard for me to tell if the car was loose or tight, because it's like, well, obviously I'm more stuck than I am on dirt, but it's still, wanting to slide out from under me. So that was a pretty big learning curve for me, and being able to push myself to be in the exact spot on the track that I needed to. I think you definitely have to be a lot more precise on the pavement to get continuous fast laps than on dirt. So that was quite a bit different for me.
Especially Anderson.
Yeah.
People look at that place and they think it's one way, and it is completely different, I'm sure, as a driver than anybody could ever imagine, especially getting off 4 and it comes up to that flat. When it drops into that flat, and you got to have the car in the right spot, because then it'll take off on you. It's a different animal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Doug kept coaching me, you got to be in this spot. You got to be in this spot. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm in that spot. And he's like, no, you're not. And just being able to get back on the throttle as fast as you kind of want to roll into it, but you got to roll into it fast, and it's a very fine line.
Right. So I'm sorry, I cut you off, and you were just talking about some of the other things you're doing for the rest of the year.
Oh yeah, so the pavement midget opportunity with Charles Breitinger, pretty excited about that. And then Bob and Janice East were nice enough to put me in the car last year. Our race got rained out, so they kind of agreed to let me do another race this year. So hopefully that works out. We're kind of planning on Gas City, because that's where we went last time in the dirt midget. But that was a cool experience as well, because I'd tested the dirt midgets before, but I'd never raced one. So that was good.
And you get to work with Bob East, who, for my money, he and Keith Coons and Rusty Coons and a couple others are the best of the last 40 years at what they do. And so, I mean, I working with somebody like Bob, it has to just be an unbelievable amount of knowledge that you just can get from him.
Yeah. Bob is a man of not too many words when you're driving the car, but you learn to know what he expects or what you should do next. When I ran the midget at Gas City, he kind of just let me do my thing. He didn't do too much. He just gave me pointers here and there, and I think I learned more just from his reaction when I came in, of if he was kind of happy or not.
Right.
Thankfully, we ran pretty good. We qualified 4th and then finished 3rd in the heat race in my first night. But yeah, he definitely throws in little tidbits of information here and there that you definitely got to pick up on.
Yeah, you definitely want to listen when you're out.
Yeah, no doubt.
So my understanding is you started a business with your husband, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So yeah, we actually own dump trucks I know that sounds a little out of the ordinary as well, but when I was younger, my dad owned a construction company, so I was kind of around it a little bit. And then growing up, obviously, I've been around cars and different types of things going up and down the road and so forth. And an opportunity presented itself for me to be able to get into that. My husband, David, he is the diesel mechanic and knows his way around those type of things. So naturally, it just kind of worked out. And I don't know if you know much about some of the programs that they have going on with the minority-owned business and disadvantaged business and so forth. I'm not super big into using those things to my advantage, but I guess if I've got them, I'll go ahead and use them, I guess. But yeah, that's been successful so far. We've got 2 dump trucks that we run out of Lafayette. We've been on jobs, do all kinds of different paving and whatnot. So yeah, it's been fun to learn the different aspects of owning a business, not just watching somebody do it from afar. It's definitely pretty stressful at times, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, I always think you're talking about it's kind of strange. The first person I always think of when I think of dump trucks is Laura Kopetsky, which I don't know if you know who Laura Kopetsky is, but she sponsored Midgets. She may have sponsored some other stuff, but I remember sponsoring Midgets, and she had Triax company, so she had a bunch of dump trucks at one time. I don't know if she still does or not, but she's the first person I think of when I think of dump trucks.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, there's some women in it, and it's kind of nice that the men take you seriously in it as long as you're doing what you're supposed to and providing the services that you say you will. I've not ran into any issues with things like that. So yeah, it's a little bit different, but it's neat.
Sure, I think it's awesome. Well, Aaron, do you have anything else for Sarah?
I don't. Thank you so much for joining us, and I know we're having some connection issues, and there's probably a million other things you could be doing now. So we do appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, Sarah, like I said, I've watched you since you were a young girl. I've always had a lot of respect for you, and hopefully you guys get a bunch of wins this year. I wish you guys nothing but the best, and maybe next year, or maybe at the end of the year, you can come back on, tell us how your year went, and next year you got to get on for our Chili Bowl thing, like what Doug did this year. When we do the kind of the where we talk about the races during the races. So you got to do it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I appreciate you having me, and yeah, we could do something at the end of the year. Hopefully, we've got some good news of some of the things that happened this year, and we'll definitely plan on the Chili Bowl deal.
And I want you to run through your sponsors real quick.
So sponsors would be Doug and Terry Wright from Doug Wright Racing. Obviously, they'd be first and foremost. Miller Welders, Triple X Root Beer, Kirsting Cycles, Poland Designs. There's a lot of different people that help us, but those would be the big ones.
And for anybody that doesn't know, Triple X Root Beer is a staple of Lafayette, Indiana. I don't know if you call it West Lafayette. I call it Lafayette, Indiana. They got a great, I'd call it a drive-in. I guess it's not really a drive-in, but I mean, it's sort of a drive-in with some sit-down.
It is a drive-in.
And it's really, man, it's just a staple of Northern Indiana. It's a great place. So anybody that's around, go eat there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good place, and obviously the root beer is super good. So.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I
Thanks, Sarah.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.